Whew. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in. Today I'm bringing you guys a behemoth of an amp from about 1969. It's got a pretty cool story that I'll share with you guys as well, and it has one of the cleanest Fender tones I have ever heard, so we will definitely check that out today. But for me, it's just really a piece of Fender history, and I enjoy this kind of thing, so if you do as well, let's check it out. This amp is officially called a dual Showman Reverb TFL 5000D. You can basically equate this amp to a twin reverb in a head cabinet. That alone doesn't seem so special, but included with this amp was a 2x15 cabinet, which is massive, and it has two 15-inch JBL speakers. So I measured this amp. It is over 60 inches in height, which is massive. You walk in the room and see this amp, and it is really something to behold, kind of looking at a Marshall full stack. Pretty sure this was the biggest Fender rig that you could ever get, and you sure do not want to know how much it weighs. So the 2x15 combination really gives this amp a unique sound all on its own, but it's also a closed back cabinet, which Fender was doing during that time period. But this is one of the few Fender amps that you could get that had reverb, but also a closed back cabinet. So it's something that's definitely one of a kind. It comes with the original Victoria covers, which are impossible to find today, and a complete set of RCA tubes that came from the factory. Again, impossibly rare, and the fact that they still work today is just a testament to how these amps were built at the time. Now that's clean. So I've got this 1969 Fender price list here, and I thought it would be really cool to share with you guys to give you some perspective. So in the Fender amplifier tube category, this amp is number one. So the dual Showman amp with reverb, piggyback cabinet, 2x15 JBL D130F speakers, you are looking at spending $1,000 on this rig plus $2,750 for the covers. That was the top of the line combination that you could get from Fender that was a tube amp. To put that into perspective though, the next highest amplifier on the list, a Fender Twin Reverb, one of the most iconic amps ever, $549. So this was nearly double the next amp in the category. And then a deluxe reverb was only about $280. So, you know, an amp that could really handle any gig, a deluxe reverb, 4 times as much, and that is pretty unbelievable to me. I wish I could tell you guys what famous players played this amp. I just don't know. I know Freddie King used some really big Silverface amps during the 70s, and I think his may have been like Super 6 or quad reverbs. I'm not sure, but maybe he played a dual Showman reverb. I think there's some photos of Jimmy playing dual Showmans, but those were the blackface models, if I remember right. So definitely a different circuit, but you know, the same model essentially. If anyone knows of any other players that use these dual Showman cabinets, please leave a comment or shoot me an email if you have any photos. That would be really cool to share, maybe in a later video. So with all that being said, I think it kind of confirms that this was the king of all Fender amps, period. And, you know, Fender came out with some other amps during the 70s, like the Super 6 Reverb, which was really a ridiculous amp. You would have 6 10-inch speakers just unusable. I mean, at least this gives you a head and a cabinet, which is a little bit easier to carry. So with all that history aside, I almost forgot to mention the story of me picking this amplifier up. So of course I check Reverb, eBay, Craigslist, and now Facebook Marketplace. And this just happened to be on there. It was in a town called Cushing, Oklahoma, which is about probably an hour northeast of Oklahoma City. Kind of a rural town, a more farming town, and a very old town in Oklahoma. So it was a little bit out there, out of the way. I think there was like 2 photos of the thing on there. I, messaged back and forth with the guy. He told me it worked, but he had no video, no sound test, no nothing. So for me to drive up there and take a risk on it, I think we agreed on a price of like $600-700. I don't know, something like that. Driving into this small town in Oklahoma and pulled up to this really old house. With all due respect, it was, kind of falling apart here or there. And then in the neighborhood had, cars in the front yards. And somebody like me walking into that situation, I never know what I'm getting myself into here. So I knock on the door, and one of the most kind, cool, generous people comes to greet me, and his name is Robbie. And I believe he told me, if the story is right, he bought this amp at a pawn shop or maybe some kind of auction in the 1980s. And at that time, this was a dinosaur. People were wanting like high gain Marshalls and stuff like that. So to have a 100-watt clean reverb, Fender amp, nobody was looking for that. So I think he bought it for like $100 or $200 maybe. And basically he used it for some gigs and mostly just practice stuff at home. And it was just a really fun, pleasant experience to meet somebody and immediately have a connection. And that's one thing about music that it's universal. And as a final note, I'll leave you guys with this. Hopefully it came across in the video, but I just enjoy the history of these pieces and uncovering them and doing the research, finding the story. That's what it's about for me, making a connection with something like that and with other human beings, All right, so I hope you guys dig it. Let's demo this thing and have some fun, okay? Peace. Alright guys, well thanks for watching. I like to put something at the end of each video just to kind of see who's watching all the way through. But sitting real close to the amp, I didn't want you guys to freak out that I was blowing my ears out or whatever, so I figured I'd show you guys the settings that I was running. So I really had the volume at about 3 here, treble 7, mid 6, bass 3, reverb around 3, maybe a little bit more just because this is a silver face Fender and that's kind of what it's about. So that's really kind of where I run the settings on most of my amps, but I might crank the volume a bit more. Some things to note in this video, there are these little handles that someone's put on the sides and the bottom here. I tried to put some tape on it. I don't know if you can see that to kind of mute it, because once the you know, the bass kind of came through the speakers, it would really rattle everything. It's even rattling the walls, and it's not so much a volume, it just feels like there's so much air being moved, and the low end of this thing is massive. So I don't know if it's the 15s or that closed back cabinet, but this thing has a unique sound all of its own. So if you guys watched this far, I really appreciate you, and please drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. All right, stay tuned. Peace.